Hey, to whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it, the odds can stack back against the wall, but if you can see.
Thank you guys for joining another episode of the Spine Bookcast, Chronicles of a Bookshop. Hey, Book Dragons, it is your girl, Lindsay, from the Spine Bookshop. Today, I have one of the coolest guests. She is not only my boss, but she's also my mentor and a very, very good friend of mine, Miss Janine Hernandez from the Book Publishing Academy. And she is probably why I'm here where I am today, because of all of her support and help. How are you doing, Miss Janine?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start off asking you the same question that I start everybody else off with. How did you get into reading?
Oh, it's just something that I love. I can remember even as small as when I was in first grade, just it's something that I've always adored. So I've always read my whole life.
What was the first book for you that was just like the clincher that you loved reading at that point?
I know that when I was younger, there was a bunch of children's books. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I would say the first series of books that I was hooked was the Babysitter's Club books.
Yeah, me too.
Those were the best. And then also, as I became a teenager, it was V.C. Andrew books.
Oh my gosh, I love those so much. I still occasionally go back and reread those.
Yes, so good.
It's nuts. Mm-hmm. Which was your first V.C. Andrews that you really loved?
I don't remember. I was 12 back then. I don't remember.
My best friend Jess loves Flowers in the Attic. That is her favorite one.
I'd have to revisit them.
Oh, man. And I think now they have a beta reader, her daughter writes them or something. I can't remember because they're still cranking them out.
Wow.
Which cracks me up.
I love it.
And so I liked those. And then we also had the Sweet Valley High books.
That rings a bell, but I don't think I read them.
That's the one where they've got the girls in high school and it was preteen and all that kind of. It's crazy to me that our generation of readers, the stuff that we remember reading, and some of it was not what we should have been reading, but yet here we are.
Yep. We survived.
We survived.
Or the Goosebumps books. Those are pretty good.
Oh, I love those. And then they've made a movie out of it now, and it's just Slappy the Clown is the only one of those that I'm not reading that one. Not doing it. Freaks me out. So, do you have a favorite book that you're working on and reading right now?
Not a favorite that I'm reading right now, but I would say my favorite book. I have multiple, but one of my favorite is Motivation Manifesto by Brendan Burchard. That's one of my faves.
And what's that about?
It's just about life and integrity and just life processes and personal development. It's a motivational book.
I love that. I love that. So now, as I've said before, you run your own company called the Book Publishing Academy. And for all disclosure, I am her assistant and accountability manager so that, we acknowledge that there's a little favoritism here. But how did you start your company?
So it actually started me. The company started me. So I published my first book when back in 2015. And so I opened up my company then, and then people would reach out to me and ask me how did you do it? Can you help me? So that's kind of how I started, is people would just reach out to me. And initially it was one-to-one coaching. It was very, very new to me, a new world. And then it just grew from there.
Yeah. So do you think that you being a reader kind of led to the logical conclusion of you being a self-published author and you teaching other people to be a self-published author?
100%. When I was little, I would tell my parents I'm going to be an author when I grow up. So it's just something that I wanted to do.
What did they say when you told them that?
They supported me, and they would connect me with different people that could maybe point me in the right direction, mentors, things like that. But I always told them I didn't want to go through traditional book publishing because I didn't want anyone to have rights over my writing.
Right.
So, there self-publishing was an option, but we didn't know how. So they were just supportive of me, and they would take me to like poetry events and things like that.
Gotcha. So, what have you found most satisfactory about your company now and what you do to help other writers?
The most satisfactory part is helping people take their story, their vulnerable story, and see it come to life. And
Yeah.
then an extra added bonus for me is when I see them on the news or a podcast or a radio. Like that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, no, I love that. So you're a writer yourself, as well as a reader. So, kind of like, what is your writing schedule like?
Well, it depends on the type of book that I'm writing, but I'll be honest with you, when I write books, I tend to go off of my intuition. I don't force myself, and I let things simmer. Like I usually get this intuitive feeling that I need to write a book. It's going to come. This is what I'm thinking about. I'll start jotting down some ideas.
Yeah.
And then I let it simmer and simmer and simmer, kind of like boiling water up until I can't take it anymore. And then once I start writing, it just flows.
Yeah.
That's how I do it.
Do you ever do research on what you're wanting to write about when you're thinking about all this stuff?
I think I do it simultaneously. Like, I tend to write more on like motivational, spiritual, things like that. So when I am writing my book, if I find that I need to explain something in it, then I will do research and, obviously cite it, but I kind of just go with the flow.
Yeah. So when you decided that you were going to start your company and you were going to self-publish and that kind of stuff, I assume that you've been reading basically your whole life and you just decided that you wanted to do that. How did you figure out how to do all that self-publishing?
It really was my first book that I self-published. I think I had a friend who helped me. And so I think I just kept perfecting it. And honestly, I started to find coaches that could teach me certain things. I took a lot of courses. Like
Right.
I just started educating myself. The more repetitious that you are with it, the more you become an expert in it. So
Yeah.
I took it and I just ran with it.
That's awesome. Now, how many writers do you have now? Just do you know off the top of your head?
About 140 authors.
That's amazing. Are they readers as well? Is that something that you you find naturally occurs with a writer?
Yeah, they're typically readers or like poets. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
I love that. So, what other hobbies do you have besides reading and writing?
I love to go watch movies. I love to hike, and I love to travel.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Me too.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular book out right now that you wish could be a movie, or is there a book that you've ever read that you thought, oh my gosh, that would make such a great movie or a TV show?
I can't think of any.
Yeah.
The top of my head right now. But I will always say that the book is always better than the movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Always.
Mm-hmm. I think the only time that I can say that was disproven for me. So the whole Beauty and the Beast story is not my favorite. It's my friend Jess's favorite. Like that is her bread and butter the whole way. And so there's an author who, gosh, I can't think of what her name is right now, but they wrote Beastly, which is kind of a modern take on Beauty and the Beast. And they in the book, I really enjoyed the book. It's a great book, and it's done. Oh gosh, who was the author? I can't remember, but I'll come up with it in just a second. But they did the movie, and it's based on Alex Flynn. That's who it is. And so they did the movie. It has Alex Pettifor and it's got Vanessa Hudgens in it, and the way that they did the makeup and the way they told the story, it was so good that I actually enjoyed the film better than I did the book, which absolutely shocked the crap out of me.
I love it.
I was like, I don't understand. This goes against everything I stand for.
I love that. That's awesome.
Is there a book that you want to write or that you have read that's made a movie that you thought there's so much better that they could have done with that?
Off the top of my head, I think a lot of like those, I don't know if they're Disney movies, but a lot of like when you read about it just like I imagine different things, but when they do come to life, it's like, oh my god, this is actually, because right now animation is a whole different beast than it was like 15 years ago. I can't pinpoint any off the top of my head, but or even like remaking movies, like movies that we saw when we were little and then they remade them now. It's like a completely different ball game. So I think that like, I don't know, there's actually a movie right now that's trending. I don't even know what it is. I haven't paid attention, but a lot of people are talking about it, about how, I thought she had blonde hair, and in the movie she has burgundy, like, so it's interesting.
That drives me nuts when they do that, because I think every reader, and I did not know this, and I talked about this with one author or one reader at one point, how when I'm reading, it like plays out in a movie in my head. And as you're reading a character description, like that's what it looks like in my head, right?
Yeah.
And so then sometimes you'll go and see the movie and your first thought is, that's not what that character looks like.
Yep.
She has red hair, not blonde hair. And he's supposed to be muscular. That's not what that character was described as. And it drives me crazy.
I know. You and a lot of us.
Yes, my husband says, he jokes that he can tell it's not going to go well the minute he hears me sigh.
I love that.
He's like, we'll be watching a movie, and I know it's not going to go well the minute you go. And I know that something hasn't matched what they've done in the book, and it's going to mess with your brain.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. So do you ever like, when you're reading and that kind of stuff, do you get really into it and like, don't do that? Why would you make that decision? And like, do you ever like get mad at the characters and stuff?
Sometimes, yeah. And actually, so right now I'm reading this book. It's called Confessions of an Innocent Man by David R. Dow. And I was reading it thinking that it was a real story. And I was just like so into it, so sucked into the story and like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And then I turn over the book to read the back of it and I realize it's like fiction. I'm like, wait, what?
Oh.
You're telling me this isn't a true story? I was so mad. I was like cursing. I was so upset. I'm like, what do you mean?
That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It's like when you watch a movie and you see the character, like especially like with horror movies, why are you running upstairs?
I know.
Go out the front door.
Yeah.
Why? So, have you ever read a book like as a kid or a young teenager type, and then you have reread it again as an adult and it's hit you totally different?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. But I know that this has happened where I read something in one point in my life and it's good, but then I read it in a different time in my life and I know that I'm like, whoa, I got something completely different out of it this time.
Mm-hmm. To Kill a Mockingbird has been like that for me. I think I've read it 4 times now, and each time it's hit me completely differently.
Yeah, and those are great books because that means, you're evolving or you're changing, but then you're looking at it from a different perspective.
Right. Is there a book, if you ever, like, what does it take to get you into a book? Like, for me, it's about 2 chapters. If you don't catch me 2 chapters in, then I can kind of pretty much guess at that point that it's not going to get better from there. So do you have like a filter test for that?
Yeah, it's usually about 2 to 3 chapters, and but I have this thing, I think it's my OCD, where I feel like I have to finish the book even if I'm not enjoying it. So I will force myself to finish it because it's
Really?
more of like like a task, like I have to finish this book. But I've only ever read maybe, and I read a lot. I read like 4 books a month. I've only ever read about 3 books that I completely disliked and wanted to get rid of because they were horrible. The rest of them have been pretty good.
Yeah, no. I used to make myself finish it, but I've come to the conclusion that a lot of people who respond with, "Oh, I don't like to read," it's because growing up, they treated reading like it was a chore, or like it was reading was presented to them like it was a chore. And I feel like if that's how you present reading to a kid, of course they're going to hate it.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they hate it, you know? And so I always feel like if I'm not into a book, I'm not going to finish it.
Yeah.
I'm just not. I don't want to have to work to read your book. And I mean, I've even had books where they come with like a glossary and a pronunciation thing. And it's just kind of like, okay, I don't want to have to work this hard to read your book.
Yes, I get it.
Do you ever do you have like your own bookshelf in your house that you like these books you will pry from my cold dead hands, or these books, okay, I read it, it can go, it's fine?
So I typically, up until this point, I have never let any single book go because I hoard them all. But I am running out of space. I'm getting to a place where I have no space now. So I have started the thought process of, okay, you need to start letting go of some of these books. So I have every intention of starting to sell some of it, but they're still there.
Of course they are.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, like I've got bookshelves upstairs in my office, and it's very much no, these are my favorite, and you'll pry them from my cold dead hands. Like these are the ones that I'll have when I'm 90. But then there's other books that's kind of like, yeah, okay, that was interesting. That can go. I don't, you know. And then do you have a Kindle?
I do have a Kindle, so I have a bunch.
Yeah, I have a Kindle. I have an Audible account. I have about 5 library accounts from all over the country. And then I have books.
Same.
I might have a problem. And I mean, you know, there's this whole debate about Kindle versus hardback book versus Audible books and what's actually reading. And I feel like any way that you can get a book into your head still counts as reading.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I listen to audiobooks too, so that still counts.
What kind of audiobooks do you listen to?
So lately it's been like business books. I'll listen to business books, some motivational books, but mostly business ones are my Audible ones. Because I'm driving, and when I'm driving, I'm like, okay, put something educational that can help your business.
Yeah, I can see that. So, do you primarily listen to nonfiction books, or are you a fiction book person, or?
I am mostly nonfiction, but there have been a few fiction books that I have read that I'm like, this is just simply amazing. So, but I tend to read more nonfiction.
Like, what are some of your fiction books that you like?
Well, the one that I'm reading right now is amazing. I also read this one book. It was called, I forgot the name of it. It was so good, and they made a movie, and I watched the movie, and both were great. I just don't remember the name.
Who was in the movie?
Girl, I don't know actors. It was, it's on the tip of my tongue. I remember what the book cover looks like, but I can't remember.
What does it look like?
It has flowers on it, and the title is like repetitive, like you or something like that.
Oh, is it? Oh gosh, I think I know which one you're talking about. Is it about 2 teenagers?
Yes, and the mom and the girl, and he used to come visit her. I forgot the name.
And she has like a disease or something. Oh, I know exactly which one you're talking about. That movie is that whole book is messed up.
but the book is really well written, and then the
Oh,
movie
yeah.
is great too. So yeah.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly who plays the mom? I can't remember.
Remember, because I've read this had to have been like 6-7 years ago that I read it. I'm gonna have to find it, and I'll let you know.
Maybe someday?
No,
No, that's a Colin Hoover book.
yeah.
I know exactly which one you're talking about, though, because I watched the movie, but I never actually read the book. Oh, the ending is just, the ending is killer. It is just killer. And I remember sitting there when it dawns on you, the ending, holy crap.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, like, so we just recently, you got out of COVID a couple of years ago. Did you struggle with reading during COVID?
No, I was home. I love being home. I'm such an introvert.
Yeah.
So the pandemic was perfect for me. I was home. I was reading. I loved it.
Oh man, I got into such a reading slump during COVID because I couldn't leave my house. Because I got laid off before, right before I started working with you. And then I remember just not being able to leave my house and thinking, I'm going to go insane. I can't sit here and read one more book or watch one more TV show. I'm going to literally lose my mind. And then someone sent me a copy of A Court of Thorns and Roses, because TikTok does this thing where your friends can send you stuff off your Amazon wish list and stuff. And so somebody sent me one because I'd heard about it, but I hadn't had a chance to read it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone sent me one. And so I think I read it in about 2 days and immediately ordered the rest of them. And I think I spent a week on the couch doing nothing but reading that entire series.
I love it. That's the best.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And then I've also read all of her Throne of Glass series, and I'm working on the Crescent City. So she's just such a good writer. And I was talking to somebody yesterday about the fantasy series and how, like, did you ever read fantasy growing up?
No.
Yeah, see, I was a big fantasy reader, but we didn't have a whole lot of fantasy other than like Lord of the Rings or, that kind of stuff. And so, we were talking about that, and I think a lot of the kids that grew up like me that didn't have stuff for young adults that we wanted to read are now writing the stuff that we wanted to read as kids. So it's really changed. I think writing and publishing books has really changed an entire generation of people and how we read and the type of books we read and that kind of stuff.
That's cool.
So how do you pick a book? Like, do you look at the cover or like, what do you do?
No, I typically well, first off, I have probably like 30 books that I haven't read yet. So
we're not even going to count the books that I haven't read yet. Yeah.
So if I come across a book, typically it's like TikTok or Instagram, somebody's talking about it, and then I'm like, okay, I need to get this, but then it gets added to my pile of unread books until I come out.
Yes. Yeah. I have a whole bookshelf in my bedroom of books that are unread. It's
Same.
Atrociously insane. And my husband has threatened to not buy me any more books because you need to read some of the ones that you have already. And it's just like, that's not how that works.
It's not how it works, no.
That's not how that works at all. And it could be worse. It could be, something really bad for me.
Mm-hmm.
And instead it's books. It's a more expensive habit because books are expensive, but,
True.
Yeah. So, what do you remember anything in particular that like when you were reading, you thought, I want to do this? Was there a particular book that made you think, oh, I want to be a writer so I can write like this?
I don't know that it was a book, but I remember when I was younger, I would have like journals with my friends, and we would write letters to each other in the journals back and forth.
Oh, I love that.
We would do that. And then I was always writing poetry, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if my poetry would be in a book one day? So yeah, those are the things that I was doing. I just always knew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you first wrote something, did you let people read it?
Yeah, I think I was letting people read my poetry. I would actually have my poetry in a binder, and I would take it with me everywhere. So yeah, I was letting people read it.
Okay. And how do you take, like, what would you advise someone who's letting someone read their book for the first time? What advice would you give them about taking feedback?
Well, I think it's good to have feedback from one trusted person and one person that you don't know that's unbiased, because they're going to give you honest feedback. I like to always give them prompts too. Like, I'll tell them this is the theme of the book, this is what the book's about, and I'll leave them with some questions on, like, did I fulfill this mission in the book? Were you able to understand my characters? Were you able to understand the theme? Was it confusing at all? Like, I will ask questions like that, and then I'll have them read it, and then I will get their feedback, and then from there I can decide ultimately if I want to change anything. So
Right. So, I know that sometimes when we're getting feedback and that kind of stuff, sometimes it's, I know it's your personal baby that you've written, and your natural instinct is maybe to, oh, I can't believe they said that. But, like, how do you suggest people take that feedback and not take it personal?
I think that you're going to have good feedback and negative feedback.
Sure.
And again, like, I think it's just the way in which it's delivered. It's better to have someone review your book before you actually launch it, and just know that that's going to be constructive feedback for you so that you can make sure you have a good end product. Now, if it's like you already launched your book and then you have a negative review, it sucks. Sometimes you got to do some self-reflection to see if really are they saying the truth, and is there anything that I should tweak? But then also sometimes there's just haters out there that love to leave bad reviews. So I would take it with a grain of salt as well.
Yeah. Is there an author in particular that you would love to meet someday?
Michelle Obama.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
Yeah, I love her books, and I love how down to earth she is, regardless of, how she was in office or whatever. So I would love to meet her.
Yeah. So I asked somebody this last week on our podcast. If you could have dinner with 4 authors, dead or alive, who would they be? I'm really curious to know who you'd pick.
Brendan Burchard, definitely VC Andrews, Michelle Obama. Who would be the fourth one? The fourth one, Gary Zukav, is that his name? He wrote A Seat of the Soul.
Okay. So how did you get into the genre of, like, self-help and nonfiction? Like, is that, like, how did you gravitate towards that?
I think as I go through life experiences, I want to share them and I want to help people. So that's kind of how that happened, is I just go through things and then I become vulnerable and I share it and I teach people what I've learned. That's how I got in there.
I know that when we did our conference in April, I remember somebody saying, and I don't know if it was you or Mariana, I can't remember, but they said, the book that you're writing isn't for you. The book that you're writing is for somebody else.
Yes.
And I really loved that. So, and I love that you write books for other people. And I mean, and I've read your books and I have them in my shop too. And I think they're amazing because, I mean, you're right. You have those experiences. And somebody said, well, when someone reads your book, they're going to read it and be like, oh, that's me. And that really hit home for me as an author and as a book reader, that you have that opportunity to reach somebody.
Yeah, to relate with them. So yeah, you can share your story, but then think about the reader and what they will get from it too.
Yeah. What do you want readers to get from your books?
I want them to be courageous and find strength, that anything that they go through, it's all for a purpose and a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I would love.
I think that would be a good goal.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of questions do you do book events where people come up and, ask you questions about the books that you've written? Do you ever have any experiences like that?
Yeah, I mean, typically sometimes I get asked to speak or like virtual events too, and they'll ask me about my books, but a lot of times they're mostly asking me about the Book Publishing Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever gotten anything that someone said about your book that you just really loved, that someone like that struck you, you never would have thought that about your book?
The feedback that I've always gotten from my book is that they're inspirational and they're motivational, both my like children's books and my like adult books as well.
Yeah.
But it's typically the same type of feedback, that they feel so inspired or it helped them. I've also heard people say that my books are their voice. They feel like I'm speaking up for them.
I love that. Are
Yeah.
you working on anything now?
I'm halfway through a business book publishing book, and then I just started my next book, which is going to highlight my life over the past year and the things that I have learned.
And what have you learned in the last year?
Oh, I can't share that yet. It's a lot for the book.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned as a reader? And then what are some of the lessons that you've learned as a writer?
As a reader, be open-minded. Be open-minded. What I would like as an outcome for a book might be different than what they wrote, so it's okay. And then also, like, I think I need to do my research, because sometimes I'll be so engulfed in the book and I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. And then I'm like, wait, it's a novel. It's not even real. I just go right into it. And as a writer, I would say get over the fear, overcome the fear of being vulnerable, because people need to hear your story.
For sure. I think so too. I absolutely think so too. So I know that with the Book Publishing Academy, we have a lot of authors that do write about their stories, and sometimes they're really sad stories of struggle and overcoming things and what have you. What would you like? How do you advise people to share their stories? And I mean, knowing that it's a hard story or it's not all sunshine and light and that kind of stuff.
Well, I try to offer as much support as I can when they need it. But I do think that it's like they do need to get to the comfort level where they are ready to share their story. I can't force them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for
a lot
sure.
of times I do recommend, like, go to counseling, get the help that you need, talk to people, talk to your family, have open conversations so you could get to that place where you're finally comfortable to share it.
Do you think it's cathartic to write about stuff that's happened to you? Or do you think that that's a good way to handle it?
For me, I think it's very therapeutic. I find
Yeah.
it helps me understand like what happened to me, and it feels really good.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have you ever worried about the things that you say in your books about what's happened to you would have backlash on you? And if so, how do you handle that?
I have absolutely no fear of that, because it's what happened to me. It's my story and it's my truth. So nobody could
I
take that.
love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. That's one of the things that I've always liked about you is you have no fear. It's just amazing.
Well, I do have fear, but I do it anyways. I do it
Yeah.
anyways. And I still, like, even if somebody said something, it's like, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to lie? I'm not going to
Yeah.
lie. Like,
No, I. So, what's your favorite part about being a reader? Like, what's your favorite thing about that?
I love that I could just escape. It's like my favorite thing to do is just sit and read a book. Like, you can escape and go somewhere else for a while.
Do you have a favorite reading spot?
My bed. I love to lay here and read. Yeah, typically my bed.
Yeah, no, me too. So, when you're in the process of writing your book and you're designing covers and that kind of stuff, how do you decide what you want your book cover to look like?
I typically just get visions. Again, I do everything intuitively, so I'll start to get visions and then I will tell my graphic designer and see if he can come up with it.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that you've got one where it's a very yellow and brown and very neutral looking book cover, and I love that. But then your kids' books are all vibrant colors and bright, and I just think that's the coolest thing, that you've got so many different ways to represent. Do you like writing kids' books or adult books better?
Adult books better.
Why?
I feel like I can reach the audience better. I think children's books are great, but a child continues to grow and then they leave those books behind.
Yeah.
Children's books, you have to do illustration, so it's a whole, like, financially it's a little bit more cumbersome. So I tend to like more of the adult books.
Yeah.
And I could do so much more with it. Like, I could write the book and then I could go on a TV show or do a podcast. I could do a whole course if I want to. I could do a workshop. I could teach on it. I could speak at an event. Whereas a children's book, I feel like I'm limited to, like, doing a book reading, maybe having them color, you know what I mean? But, like, yeah, it actually stops after that. So
I know that you've written two kids books, or just one?
Yeah, two.
Okay. What inspired you to write those?
So my first book is called Feathers in the Sky. This was a time where I would see feathers everywhere, and then I started to realize that it was a sign. So I started to do research on what that was about. So my book is about feathers, the different colors and what they mean. And then my second book is called The Soul in Me Sees the Soul in You. And I wrote that book for two reasons: for kids that are very intuitive and they can feel, they can see, they can, they have very special spiritual gifts, but then also for nonverbal autistic children. It's really, really cool when you can still communicate with them nonverbally. Sure. So I wrote the book for them too.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there is a lack of books for, because I mean, you said, autism and stuff. Do you think that there's a lack of books in the genre of special needs?
Yes, but I do see now that there's more authors speaking on really important topics such as special needs or indigenous cultures, different things. I think it's amazing to see those types of books.
Oh, yeah. And I think that that's definitely something that has become definitely more prominent in the last maybe 10 years, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because I think with mental health and all that kind of stuff, I think that there's definitely more of a focus on targeting mental health and getting help for it. And so I think that as a genre for kids, there's definitely more stuff going on with that.
I agree.
So do you think that how many more books do you think you're going to write?
Well, as long as I live, so I know that I will have a lot of books.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Do you go to that's my dog, sorry. Do you go to book cons and that kind of stuff?
I don't. I used to, but not anymore. I've gotten myself under control now to where I don't buy as many books as I used to, and I feel like it's torture to go to those, and then you want to buy all of them, and you can't.
Oh my gosh, I know.
And I'm the same way. I'm like, I cannot go in that bookstore because I'm gonna walk out with all the So I just like self-discipline.
Yeah, I am not to be trusted in a bookstore with a credit card.
Exactly.
That's not a thing. We have a guest today. My dog has decided it's time to play, and that's probably who you hear in the background. Okay. So, what's your favorite thing about writing?
That I get to express myself.
Yeah.
And it's your thoughts, not anyone else's.
Yeah. Would you consider writing an art form?
Oh, it is 100%.
Yeah.
It's a form.
So outside of nonfiction, what is your other favorite genre?
I Again, I tend to stay with nonfiction. I do like romance is cool, but I don't read it often.
Yeah.
I tend to stay with nonfiction.
Is there a book that's been made out of any of your nonfiction books? Or I'm sorry, is there a movie or a TV show that's been made out of any nonfiction books that you like?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. Is there a book out there that you would like to see that's nonfiction made into a book or a movie?
I don't know that they could do a movie out of it, but there's a book that I read called A Happy Pocket Full of Money, and I definitely think that's such an important book. I would love to see a documentary on it or some sort of like educational video.
And what is that about?
That talks about money and money mindset and the energy of money. So like a lot of people will stay in a scarcity mindset around money and they'll continue to stay in debt for the rest of their life. But when you start to look at money from a different perspective, and you go deeper within that, it helps you overcome some of those blockages that you have with money.
I know Dylan Shively, who's a credit guy. We met him at that conference in April, and he talks about credit and how getting your credit in shape and all that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed that he was very frank about it.
Yes.
You know, I was not expecting him to be that frank, but I really love that about him because he's very much like, you're not going to like what I have to say, but what I have to say is true. So, buckle up.
Yep. I love that.
It's one of my favorite things about him. And I've actually got him scheduled later, at a later date for an episode of the podcast too.
Love it.
So any last minute advice, for our listeners, on reading and writing before we sign off?
I would say for writing is if you've started your book and you've held yourself back, make sure that you finish it. Because how cool is it to know that you have a book somewhere in the world? Like literally, you could be here in the US and someone in Japan could be reading your book right now. Like that is super cool. So yeah.
My friend Clarence is a poet and he had someone from Australia buy his book and it just blew him away.
Crazy. I just love it.
I think it's the coolest thing that you can reach someone on the other side of the world and that they want to read what you have to say. I just think that's the coolest thing ever.
It's amazing. I love it.
Well, Janine, thank you so, so much for sitting down and talking books and publishing with me today. I really appreciate it. And
of course.
Definitely follow Janine like I said, she runs the Book Publishing Academy. And if you want to write a book and get it published, she and I can help you. And if you want to get your book in my store, I can help you. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Spine Bookcast, Chronicles of a Bookshop. Happy reading, and we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Hey, to whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worrying. I get it. The odds seem stacked back against the wall, but even consider it such